And I'm like, what is this? This is completely different than any other church I've gone to. I knew nothing about Joseph Smith. I knew nothing about golden plates. I had heard of the Book of Mormon, but I didn't know anything about it. I'm reading the Book of Mormon for the first time in my life.
Do you remember what it is that you read?
Yeah. So I want to say,
Okay, well, we've been chatting already, but I would love to just start from the beginning of 52 churches in 52 weeks and what your thought process was in starting your project, like about doing it, and then also going onto YouTube and making it public.
yeah. Oh boy. So the way it started, so I went to a lifelong Lutheran church, ever since I was a baby. So baptized when I was 21 or 22 days old, and that's all I knew. It came from a very strict type of church from a Protestant perspective, and so throughout my life, that's all I knew. But there was certain things where it's like, I don't know if this is right or this is, just things would come up. And one day, something happened where it's like, I'm never coming back here. So I kind of joined that spiritual but not religious camp for a long time. And I had a best friend who was looking out for me, who was atheist. And he was kind of getting me, showing me different type of ideas and things. So, I would leave the fairy tales of the Bible and the church and all that kind of stuff. And I was very close to doing that, but I just had this thought. I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit. I don't know what, but in the middle of the night, just this little whisper: 52 churches in 52 weeks. I'm like, that would be an interesting idea. So it took me a while to act on it, but then finally decided all right, I'm just going to walk to the nearest church and just see what happens. So I started to chronicle my this church visit basically towards my friend who said, hey, I would actually read that.
Okay, so he was your audience.
He was my audience, exactly.
So did you have him in mind every time you went to a church?
For myself too, because I was trying to find my own kind of faith journey, but also maybe this would be an interesting idea to convey to my friend as well. So my very first church visit, for the first week, I had 4 people read it. That was it. But I just continued to do this. So I just would visit some more local churches, and then I kind of got it in my head, hey, it might be interesting to visit. What else is outside my state or my area in Wisconsin, from where I'm from? So we went. I found this veterans church outside Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's like they had like this mortar as part of the church because it was on a military base. I'm like, oh, that looks interesting. So I drove 3 hours to Minnesota, and it was fascinating because inside it was veterans, all wearing, their veteran jackets. And their opening act was this gentleman who played the harmonica. So it was bringing these people back to their military days, like the good parts of their military days. And so I drove 3 hours back. I'm like, who drives 6 hours to go to church? So the idea of a spiritual adventure kind of popped in my head. And then it was like, I wonder where else I could drive and see different type of churches. So for that first journey, and this was in 2014, 2015, I would go to just all kinds of different denominations, and then also would do some niche churches that were interesting, like going to a heavy metal rock church, or one where, these, I won't get too far into it, but, I go from New York City, I go to LA, just driving and just kind of see what else was out there. And
did you plan beforehand, or would you just show up in a state and then see what you found as you were driving?
A lot of times it was very spontaneous.
Okay.
There were some churches that I kind of was like, oh, that would be interesting to visit. I finally decided I want to kind of do like a cross-country road trip for the final stretch. So it was going to take me 2 weeks to do, but work told me, hey, we can't have you gone for 2 weeks. So I actually put in my 14 days
To do this.
to finish this up. And they kind of had to bring me in a meeting. It's like, we don't want to lose you, so finish up the church project and then come back, So, yeah.
So you were serious. You were willing to quit your job to continue your research.
Right. Yeah, and this was all out of pocket, so it's like I just thought it like this needs to be told, just get a little bit of an idea, a little bit of a pulse on what church is like in a small sampling throughout the United States, as much as I could, financially afford to do so. So I finished that, and then I posted on Facebook, hey, I finished the 52 churches in 52 weeks. Here's everything that I learned. Here's all the different type of churches that I visited. And I had a high school friend who messaged me, well, did you go to a Mormon church? Did you go to a Latter-day Saint church? I'm like, no, like, what's that? Because I thought I had heard of Mormons from my background, but I just thought it was another Protestant church. So that always was kind of in the back of my head. Maybe I need to do 52 churches in 52 weeks again in the future, but I won't do it right away.
What happens next when you decide maybe I should do this again?
So a number of years pass because one of the things that happened is, I kind of learned it's not a good, to visit all these different churches, it's not a good long-term solution for your faith journey. You want to find a home community. But after the pandemic, I was very bored, like there wasn't a whole lot to do. Churches have been shut down throughout 2020, and things were starting to open up again, and kind of decided, hey, it might be fun to do this again 2022. So, but again, it's like, I won't make it like last time. I'll just keep it very close, just local churches. But then it's like in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know if I can keep it close because I may want to go further out at some point. So just decided, let's try it again.
So this is 2022. At the beginning, what part of the year?
This was April.
April of 2022. So exactly 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
You embark on another series of 52 churches in 52 weeks.
Yeah. So what happened? Yeah. So the way this started. So like I was getting ready to kind of move forward in life, and like I was preparing to move, had moved a number of different items, and then all of a sudden things happened. And at that point, cardinals were a big part of of a couple different things I was seeing. And so like I've lost purpose. I don't know where to go next. Like I'm praying to Heavenly Father, all right, what do I do next?
Why did you feel like you lost purpose?
So I won't get too far into it, but I was looking to marry. And things were going really, really well. And with that relationship, cardinals were a big part of it. Like that was our thing. And all of a sudden when that ended, it's like, all right, well, I was going to get married. Thought I was going to move. Thought I was going to have this purpose. So that didn't work out. Okay, that's fine. So I'm praying what to do next. And the next morning, a cardinal perches above the tree as I'm about to take off for work. I'm like, that's weird. That's very coincidental. But one reason I couldn't move is I had this big tree that was down in my backyard. And I was calling people, hey, can you, all these tree removal services, they couldn't help me out. Asked my friend, it's like, yeah, let me get a chainsaw, I'll help out. And that never happened. But I just remembered that cardinal. So I, leave for work, all that. It's like, the coincidence was really weird. A week later, I'm talking with my neighbor. We meet a new neighbor. We're trying to figure out, what do we do with this tree? Because it's his tree in my yard. And then this new neighbor is, just new in town. And the new neighbor is like, you know what? We might be able to take care of that. And I'm like, nah, you don't have to worry about it. Sure enough, the next day, I get back from work. A cardinal came back right in that spot. So I walk over, I try and take a picture of it, and I start to notice the tree is gone. So my neighbor was a good Samaritan, removed it, didn't say anything. So I'm like, that's so another weird coincidence. But then now I have all my burdens removed. Now it's like, what do I do next? And let's do 52 churches in 52 weeks again. Let's see what happens. So do a few church visits. Week 8, I went into Amish country to visit a Mennonite church, which was so fascinating because it was like walking into a little house on the prairie kind of episode. But I had to dress really nicely. So I'm like, well, I have everything ironed. I have my clothes looking good. I've heard about this Mormon church. Maybe I can visit that because as an evangelical, I know nothing about it. I knew nothing about Joseph Smith. I knew nothing about golden plates. I had heard of the Book of Mormon, but I didn't know anything about it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was like a Protestant type of catechism book.
Interesting. Okay.
So I drive out for my week 9 visit, and I'm going to visit this. I put in my GPS and got there. I'm like, I don't really. I know there's other ones in Madison. Let me try and visit a different one. So I change up my GPS. All of a sudden, my GPS goes out on me. So, all right, I go off to the side of the road, kind of fix it. And then as I'm pulling out, 2 red cardinals just swoop in front of me. Weird. Another coincidence. It's like that's stuck in my mind with these red birds. And I know it sounds silly, but it's like the red streaks were just so prevalent to me at that point. So I go to this ward in Madison, Wisconsin, and I have one of the best first impressions of a church of any that I've gone to. And at this point, I had been to over 60 with all these different visits. So I meet a lady comes up to me and welcomes me, another gentleman. We get talking, and I'm just asking him, who is this Joseph Smith? What is this? And he just sat down with me and just helped me, and then got me in contact with the missionaries. And then I talked with the missionaries for at least half an hour, or an hour and a half, I should say. And I'm like, I have never had a first impression like this of a church anywhere else.
Can you describe that? Like what were your feelings?
It was so welcoming because a lot of churches, everyone's kind of off, kind of doing their own thing. So to have an embrace of people where it's like, oh, you're a visitor. Hey, we'd love to know more about you. We would love to help you along. So especially with the missionaries, I found myself having so many questions like priesthood keys and golden plates and just everything. So I was fascinated by this because of just how kind, welcoming the hearts of everyone inside this congregation. So I go home, do a couple other church visits. My missionaries get me in contact with my local missionaries. So I took a lesson or two. It's like, I don't really know anything about this Book of Mormon, but I'll listen to it because I'm trying to be as open-minded as possible. So I get sick. I miss a week. So for my week 12 visit, I need to do a workaround because if I'm sick and I'm coughing, like COVID is still on everyone's mind, I can't go anywhere into a church congregation. So I'll do a workaround. So there was a local church who had this park area where they basically built like this little tiny church setup. I'm like, perfect. With all these cardinals, maybe God communicates with me with nature. I don't know. It sounds silly, but this is my workaround. Let's do this. And it was a complete disaster. Bugs were everywhere. Like they were just kamikazing in my face, orbiting around my head. I'm like, I gotta get out of here. And as I'm driving away, a red cardinal bird just peeks over and flies away. And in my week 12 video, I have no idea what to talk about because what am I going to talk about? Bugs hitting my face? I will talk about this weird cardinal coincidence. And next thing I know, the power was out that day. I'm reading the Book of Mormon for the first time in my life, just because of that red cardinal bird.
Really? So you determined when you saw the bird, I should read.
Right. Because my previous Latter-day Saint visit, I saw the 2 cardinal birds. Weird coincidence. Again, silly. Make of it what you want to do. But that was my weird story.
But it was speaking to you.
It was weird. Yeah, it was weirdly speaking to me for some reason. So it's just the red streaks. So next thing I know, as I'm continuing on with this faith church visiting process, I'm still kind of digging into the Book of Mormon. It's all very novel. It's all very different to me. But I'm continuing with my missionary lessons on a bi-weekly basis. Just kind of like, all right, tell me more. It's very different, but I want to be open-minded. I want to understand this because that church was so welcoming. So I decided, all right, I'm going to go on my own faith journey here. I'm going to go to a second Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints the next week. And for that visit, I had a few other cardinals appear to me before that visit. The talk that was given by who was selected, like the symbolism spoke directly to me. And again, just such a welcoming ward. And I'm like, what is this? This is completely different than any other church I've gone to.
Wow. Do you remember what they spoke about?
So the person that gave the talk talked about 2 missionaries in a balloon. And that symbolism spoke directly to me because of prior things that have happened to me in the past. The balloon. I just remember that's directed at me. So just, again, very strange. There's no logical reason. Is it spiritual? I don't know. But so I decided, okay, I'm going to do more church visits. And I had learned more about, there were other Book of Mormon believing churches. Because I didn't want to keep doing the same Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because I'm trying to explore all these churches. I'm trying to make it a wide variety on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see, here's what a Catholic church looks like. Here's what a biker church looks like. Here's what a Viking church looks like.
Wait, there are Viking churches?
So it's based off 11th century Nordic stave churches. I won't get into it here. But
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah. So some parts of the Midwest, they've built replicas of these Norwegian stave churches.
Wow.
Fascinating stuff. But I was just trying to find some more interesting ones. But I would go to other, the Church of Jesus Christ. The Bickertonite group is what they're often referred to. So I visited that church. And again, some of the best, just amazing, they're giving me hugs, during my visit. And just soul of the earth, amazing type of people. And then I go to the Strangite church that was founded by James Strang. And same thing, they are just amazing people. And it's why are the Book of Mormon believing churches just a little bit more fruitful in their interactions and their personalities compared to these other churches I'm going to? It just was very strange. So continue on. So I finish up the 52 churches in 52 weeks, part 2, I guess, and ended that at a snake handling church. Won't get into the whole story on that. But I was after the whole thing, I was just so more interested, with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the Book of Mormon believing churches. And I had a number of people asking me, you need to do a temple open house.
Mm. And this is coming comments on your YouTube channel?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Just a lot of people reaching out and just sharing, their testimonies and their stories and their faith and their relationship with Jesus Christ. And again, this is the example is just, tell me more. What is so different about this?
You're noticing something different about these churches that subscribe to the Book of Mormon, right? That's the common denominator. So can you talk a little bit more about that? What you said the fruits they were welcoming, they were giving you hugs. Like, what else? How else would you describe it if there was anything else?
Yeah. I think it's just patience and kindness. And like, for instance, especially on my missionary calls, like I was on missionary calls for close to 2 years, biweekly, and then eventually ramped it up to weekly calls. And the persistence, the follow-up, because a lot of churches just they don't follow up, it's usually emails, that personal relational type of touch, and to have questions and have answers and just talk and understand and try and figure it out. And yeah, so that was something where things were growing. So fruitful growth, that was something with a symbolism going on there.
Okay. I'm so curious if we can go back to that day that you read the Book of Mormon for the first time.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it is that you read?
Yeah. So I want to say, and again, this is, almost 2 years ago, so I don't remember the exact, but I do recall First Nephi, probably through First Nephi 8. And I do remember early on the tree of life and Lehi's dream. So that symbolism with the tree was something that really kind of was a seed from a symbolism standpoint, as I was kind of learning a little bit more about it.
Is there any particular part of this that you would want to read? Not to put you on the
So
spot, but
I'm not.
yeah.
I'm always bad because as a kid, like I would do like the Bible passage memorization kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
I was terrible at that. So I think for me, like the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the things that come alive for me is a symbolism.
Yeah.
So I think for me with the tree of life, it's just like what is the seed that kind of just made the tree of life? Because I'm seeing these fruits in that vision with Lehi, and I'm seeing these fruits from not just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, but then also the other Book of Mormon believing churches, like the Community of Christ were very fruitful to me.
Mm-hmm.
The Church of Jesus Christ with the Bickertonite group, the Strangite Church. I'm like, this is different. So it's almost like the restoration branches as a whole kind of helped with me just seeing the Book of Mormon in a different light, as opposed to, the background that I had come from, like an evangelical Protestant perspective, where it's like, oh, the Book of Mormon is this terrible thing.
Mm-hmm.
So as I would look in the eyes of the people and I'd see their example towards me in church, it really made me question things. And that planted the seed for me in my own type of faith journey as well.
That's so interesting you talk about, like the fruits and the seed being planted, because like when Nephi has this same vision, like he asks to have this vision that Lehi had, and then he's asking for the meaning, right? He's like, well, what does this mean?
Yeah.
And then we find out that the fruit of the tree is the love of God, right? And so that's so interesting you say that, because the fruits that you were experiencing, one could say, right, were potentially like the love of God, feeling love in these communities. So
yeah, the example, just
yeah,
love of God. I like that. Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to these, you're having these experiences. You're meeting with the missionaries. You have all of your questions. So this was 2022, but you've recently, like in 2023, you've continued. So did you do another year of 52 and 52?
So I finished in 2023 around April, May.
Mm-hmm.
There was a few weeks where it wasn't actually 52 weeks. It may have been more like 54 or 55, but that doesn't sound as catchy. But again, had so many requests to do temple open houses. So I did, so I decided, okay, let's do this. So I drove out to Arkansas for the Bentonville, Arkansas temple. And I was shocked again at just like all these smiles and all these families and this excitement to tour this new temple. I'm like, again, what is this? This is so different compared to other type of churches that I've gone to. So there's a lot of reaction for that video, and I had a couple other requests. Hey, come out to Utah. Orem, Utah temple
Mhm.
and the St. George, Utah temple, this historic pioneer temple as well. And those temple open house visits, like I started to see themes, especially with the symbolism. So with the Orem, Utah temple, there's all these pictures because I guess with Orem, there's a history of cherry orchards, if I'm understanding
Yeah.
that correctly.
Yeah.
So they have like the stained glass windows kind of as you see the growth as you go further up. So the idea of growth was very central to my understanding. And that goes back to the tree of life, that goes back to the seeds, that goes back to the fruits.
Mhm.
And then with the St. George Temple, this pioneer, this historic, this iconic temple, um, my tour guide is kind of telling me about, what they had to do to build this foundation. And that's where I was having some issues just trying to like build a foundation because I'm like, Book of Mormon, like my entire life I've been told, you know, it's not like the Bible is the here and all, you know, but I'm not seeing the fruits as much as I'm seeing with all these restoration churches.
Mm.
So for me, next, it was just kind of like, how do I keep building this foundation? Because with the St. George Temple, like they decided, like Brigham Young decided, we're going to put it on this marsh, this swampy area. It's like, what? As a worker, you're kind of like, well, why? We could just go over here and put it. But they went with it, and they built this solid, sturdy foundation. And my understanding is they've got like Napoleon's cannon somehow
Oh, wow.
through the Mormon battalion, and they would pile drive it. And Brigham
Oh.
Young said, like, this needs to like, I don't know the word for it right now, but it's like it has to like hit 3 times, and then we know the foundation is good. So that always fascinated me. So then with my final temple open house visit, in Manti, that one kind of blew me away just with how many people were there, these huge crowds. It's like, this is out in the middle of nowhere. How is there this many people out here? And then this whole idea of peace and protection. And that kind of just combined for me for my appreciation. It's like, okay, I'm kind of seeing this, and the things are beginning to piece together in my head on this now.
Mhm. So, I mean, I'm just sitting here thinking like, these were all very recent. I mean,
Yeah.
Manti was just a few weeks ago, a month ago ish, and then Orem was dedicated in January, and the St. George like December, right?
Yeah.
So these are all very recent, fresh experiences.
And I was very like even before the Manti Temple, like I was planning to get baptized. I just didn't know a date, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, do I need another cardinal coincidence? And sure enough, like I'm having this trouble. I can't get to sleep. Kind of like how the 52 churches and 52 weeks idea kind of came up in my head the first time. And finally, I'm like, seriously, let's pray about the Book of Mormon. And I just get this sense of peace, this sensation. I could get to sleep. It's not a big thing. But I just remember, completely calmed down. So with the Manti, Utah temple, I was learning about Minerva Teichert.
She's amazing.
I can't say enough good things as I learned about her story. And I'd wandered into the Church History Museum and I saw her exhibit. I didn't know much about her at the time, so I couldn't really appreciate it. But I had heard with the Manti, Utah temple, like there was this uproar that they may have removed some of the murals, including hers, in the world room. And, they didn't. And I'm glad because as I'm going through these rooms, I go into the garden room and, there's no cardinal birds in Utah, but in this garden room, there's one in the corner. Now, I didn't believe it. It's like, it has to be any other red bird. There's no way a cardinal bird would be there. But that was kind of and I would have so many people who would mention, that those are God winks. Those are divine signatures. God's Heavenly Father speaks to us in our own personalized, individual ways. So in a weird way, that was kind of like, I need, this has to be the Spirit. This has to be some type of guidance. I need to learn more about this, because I'd heard as well, like cardinal birds, they can be spiritual messengers, or they could be this. We don't know, but it was talking to me.
Right. And that's all that matters. Yeah. Wow. And so you go through I actually have a question about these temple open houses. Did you notice anything, like, did you feel any different when you were in the temple space than you did in other congregations or like regular church? Like,
The first time, no. I didn't really know what I was looking at.
right.
But I think for me, as I visited the Orem, St. George, Manti, like things were kind of piecing together, And it was more of these ideas kind of stemming from the Book of Mormon, the ideas of growth and the idea of foundation and this idea of peace and protection. So it was growing.
Okay. I see. I'm so excited for you to go through more, to see more temples.
I've had some comments. You got to do 52 temples in 52 weeks. So, well,
why not?
Why not? Yeah, at some point,
and
maybe.
now that you're, baptized member, I'm giving it away, but you could easily go to,
Yeah. I got to
temples
go
all
through
the
the
time.
process yet, because
Yeah.
I'm still a LDS baby at this point, I guess.
Yeah. So can you talk about that? Like, why? So you're just recently baptized. I mean, we're just shy of a week. Tomorrow will be a week from the time that you entered the waters of baptism.
So the timing of this interview worked out really well.
It's incredible. Yeah. So what can you talk about? Like, what was the turning point that you made this decision last week?
Yeah. I think for me, like, everything had been building up. Like, so I was ready to do it. I just didn't know a date. So I was kind of figuring that out. And I think for me, I started to see what I'm calling like the need for a seed. And I started to see, in my Protestant evangelical background, like, there's a lot of bickering, there's a lot of arguments, and it's hard to cut through to see the love of Christ right now. And it's hard to see that. And then when I go to the Book of Mormon believing churches, when I do the temple open houses, I would just see that fruit of love and, families and foundation, everything like that. And I'm like, I need to do this now. I don't want to keep procrastinating. I need to move forward. I got to take a step forward. And that's kind of the big thing. I think especially if you do convert, is there's a fear. There's a big fear because you don't know, because everything beforehand, where you come from. That's what you're familiar, that's what you're content with. And so then to move forward, there's that fear of, what are people going to say? My faith is going to be persecuted, per se. The hammers and the nails are going to come out. And I'm like, that's kind of what Jesus Christ is all about. Like, I will take the hammer and the nails. That's the disciples. They left everything to follow Jesus Christ. Through all my crazy, weird church experiences and whatever the cardinal sightings are, like, I need to take the next step. And I think in getting baptized at this point, it was fascinating, because you go all these different churches and you see baptisms yourself. To go in the water, like, and I mentioned in my video, it's like I just had this flash image of Jesus Christ kind of reaching his hand out for you as you're going down the water, very vulnerable, and to come back up, like, you need Christ and you need that hand. And with Peter kind of, sinking or swimming, no, he's going to walk, taking that leap of faith. It's scary. I have to see what's next. Like, something is here and I need to keep moving forward.
And the only way you find out is if you just start walking.
Exactly.
Yeah. You've got to see if you can walk on water.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. We'll see what happens. Yeah.
So how did you feel at your baptism?
I felt, so again, a lot of fear going in, but also just like I'm finding this sense of peace. I'm sensing, okay, I'm moving forward. So a lot of unknowns, but also a lot of excitement. So
Very cool. Yeah, I'm noticing a theme through all of this. There's the growth theme, right? The moving
right.
forward, the growing. You're planting a seed, it's going to grow into a tree. It's going to produce fruit. And as you nourish it, right?
And that's another thing too with baptism. It's about water. And it's like if you're going to nourish the tree, like you're going to need some water. So yeah,
That's good. That's a great tie, and nourishing it with the word of God, right? Too, and like study the Book of Mormon. So, well, this is awesome, and a complete honor to be able to interview you like right after. And this so fresh. Your story is still unfolding. There's so much more to come, and so I'm
right.
excited to see how it unfolds and what comes next for you. So turning specifically to the Book of Mormon, what I love to do is just actually open it and like read from it and hear you read from it and record your voice reading something out of the Book of Mormon. So if you, it can connect to your story, but just really anything that, and I know you said, you don't feel like you're necessarily scriptorian memorizing scriptures, but something that may have stuck out to you at any point along this journey as you've been reading for the past 2 years.
I always go back to 1 Nephi 8. That is kind of what started my process here.
Yes, I love it. It's so beautiful.
And it came to pass that, by the way, 1 Nephi 8:24.
24.
8:24. And it came to pass that I beheld others pressing forward, and they came forth and caught hold of the end of the iron rod. And they did press forward through the mist of darkness, clinging to the rod of iron, even until they did come forth and partake of the fruit of the tree. And after they had partaken of the fruit of the tree, they did cast their eyes about as if they were ashamed. And I also cast my eyes around about, and beheld on the other side of the river of water a great and spacious building, and it stood as it were in the air, high above the earth. And it was filled with people, both old and young, both male and female, and their manner of dress was exceedingly fine. And they were in the attitude of mocking and pointing their fingers toward those who had come at and were partaking of the fruit. And after they had tasted of the fruit, they were ashamed because of those that were scoffing at them, and they fell away into forbidden paths and were lost. And now I, Nephi, do not speak all the words of my father, but to be short in writing, behold, as he saw their multitudes pressing forward, and they came and caught hold of the end of the rod of iron, and they did press their way forward, continually holding fast to the rod of iron, until they came forth and fell down and partook of the fruit of the tree.
Beautiful. I know you just barely, so maybe as you think about what your thoughts are on that, I just wanted to say, like, as I've never read this thinking of your story, obviously, because I have never met you before, and I didn't know that this was something that had touched you.
Yeah.
So as you're reading, I was thinking about like, oh my goodness, like this is your experience. There was the fear kind of from the great and spacious building, right?
Right. So when I visited a general conference, and one point I made during that is, there's a lot of people that are mocking Latter-day Saints as you're walking in. So there is that feel, especially because you're walking on and you have all these guardrails, kind of like your little iron rod right there. And as you're walking into the conference center, there's so many people just mocking and insulting and persecuting Latter-day Saints with their different faith beliefs. And I think with Scripture, with the Word of God, it's like you're going for that fruit, and you have to kind of walk past it. And again, for me, as I kind of take this new journey, like I'm very, like there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of doubt, because I'm sure, people are going to come out with the nails and hammers at me. But I gotta see this through. I gotta see what this tree of life is all about. I gotta see what this fruit is about, because I've just seen too much with all the travels I've done. I gotta taste it.
Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. Yeah. And I just wanted to pull this up as you were saying that when they make it, right, they make it past those loud voices. And when they make it, they say, they fell down until they came forth and they fell down and partook of the fruit of the tree. It's almost like relief, like kind of this feeling of I'm
Yeah.
here, I'm safe, and then you can partake. So
Yeah.
yeah, there will always be those voices, right? But you just like press forward and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, congratulations and
Thank
way to
you.
go. And you have like an army of people who are supporting you or who are going or who are trying to do the same thing, you know? And so you're never like alone in that journey
Yeah.
as
And
you're
that's
holding.
what's, especially after announcing the baptism news, is just, I'm shocked. My jaw is on the floor, like figuratively, not literally, but just the love and the congratulations and just the care that people have had. It's just like, what is this?
Yeah. Well, cool. I am just as we wrap up, I would be curious what you would say to somebody who is on a similar, okay, how do I say this? Because when I think of you, I kind of feel like this is like a modern day Joseph Smith experience in some ways. Like, you didn't know who Joseph Smith was when you first started,
No
and then
idea.
you got to know.
One of the first questions I asked was, do you guys just call him Joe Smith? Like, that's how little I knew
You call him
my
Joseph
first
Smith.
visit. Yeah.
And so, I'm sure, like, you find out more about him. He's living in the 1800s during the Great Awakenings, and he's going to all of these different churches and trying to decide which one to join. So, in many ways, like, very similar to your story, right? And so, what would
And it's weird to be compared to that, because it's like, no, I don't want to be compared to that. But I can understand, how that works. Because I was thinking too, it's like usually when I first started that, the last one, it's like my original plan was just to visit 4 local churches. I'm like, wait a minute, is that how the whole Palmyra works with the 4 corners churches? It's like, oh, I ended up doing 3, not 4, but that was kind of weird just thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would just be curious, like, what would you say to somebody who is embarking on a similar search? Maybe they're not going to go to 52 churches in 52 weeks. Maybe they're not, they're not living in Joseph Smith's time and they're going to go to like preachers just openly preaching in their little, like, however it was at the time. But they want to find out. They're on a search. Like, what would you say
Yeah.
to them?
Yeah. Patience, take your time, but definitely pay attention to the fruits. Like the example of restoration churches I would see really spoke to me. So, and that speaks as well for church members. Hey, if you see someone new, hey, say hi, welcome them into the church, because you never know what's going to happen, you know? And when I sat down for my very first ward visit, I just sat down in the back. All right, I'm going to see what happens. And then things completely changed because I wasn't telling anyone I was doing all these church visits. But yeah, if you're on a journey, if you're on the journey for Christ, like how does that church love your neighbor? How can you love God more? And if you have that, if those commandments are at the forefront of your mind and you're seeing that in the church, I think you're on your way.